The school bell rang loud and clear across the wide, tiled hallways of Greenfield High, signaling the start of another grueling Monday. Students trudged in with half-closed eyes, coffee cups, and the same gossip that had recycled itself over 1,000 lunchtimes. But one girl in particular entered quietly. As usual, soft footsteps, head lowered, and sat in the back row without saying a word. Her name was Ava. She had long black hair that was always neatly tied, oversized glasses perched on her nose, and a silence that made her invisible to most. No one really knew her, and those who tried were discouraged by the cold glares of the school's queen bee, Madison, and her pack of followers. Ava wasn't just quiet, she was an enigma wrapped in stillness, and that somehow made her a target. Madison ruled the classroom like a spoiled princess with a social media crown. With perfect eyeliner and a permanent smirk, she strutted into homeroom followed by Lexi and Amber, her ever-loyal sidekicks. Their eyes locked on Ava the moment they walked in. There she was again, sitting all by herself, scribbling something in her sketch pad as if the world outside didn't matter. And that alone was enough to ignite Madison's hatred. She hated people who weren't desperate to be liked. She hated Ava's silence. She hated how someone so invisible could remain so unfazed. "You know what I think?" Madison whispered to Lexi as they passed Ava's desk. "Little Miss Ghost Girl needs a makeover." Lexi giggled, nudging Amber, and the three of them walked off plotting like hyenas. But what they didn't know was that Ava's quietness wasn't weakness. It was a storm building in silence. That day during art class things spiraled. The students were supposed to create ink-based portraits. Black bottles of India ink were passed around, and the air smelled like chemicals in anticipation. Ava's hand moved gracefully across the paper, her brushwork delicate yet intense. Mr. Carver, the art teacher, had paused once just to admire her technique. "Now that's talent," he muttered, nodding with approval. But Madison saw this moment of praise, and it boiled her blood. As Mr. Carver turned to help another student, Madison motioned for Lexi. They exchanged a look and walked toward Ava, who was focused on her work and didn't notice what was coming. With a sly sleight of hand and no remorse, Madison popped the cap off the ink bottle and, without hesitation, poured it all over Ava's head. Gasps filled the room. Black ink dripped down Ava's forehead, staining her glasses, soaking her hair, and splattering her artwork like a crime scene. Everyone went still. But Ava didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't even flinch. Slowly, she reached up and wiped the ink from her face, smearing it purposefully. Then, she looked straight at Madison. The class expected a breakdown, a meltdown. But Ava stood up slowly, rubbing the ink deeper into her own scalp with calm fingers. She removed her glasses and laid them neatly on the desk. Then, with her eyes locked on Madison's, she leaned in, lips close to the girl's ear, and whispered, "Now watch." The way she said it, soft, unbothered, yet full of promise, sent a shiver down everyone's spine. Then Ava calmly walked to the front of the room, her hair now soaked and streaked in ink like a warrior's war paint. She picked up her ink-splattered artwork and held it high. "You want a show?" she said, loud enough for the whole class to hear. "Let's begin." Silence. Then Ava did something none of them expected. She grabbed a clean canvas, dipped both hands into a full jar of ink, and began painting with wild, confident strokes, creating faces, movement, emotions, chaos, and beauty all at once. Her fingers danced across the surface, splashing, swirling, and sculpting emotions that stunned the class into silence. They weren't watching a girl being humiliated. They were watching an artist in her rawest form. Her pain became power, her ink a weapon. Madison sat frozen. Ava turned around, her hands black with ink, and said, "You tried to destroy me, but you just gave me the spotlight." The art teacher returned and froze when he saw what Ava had created. "My God," he whispered. That's going in the front display." He turned toward the class. "This is what art is. Real, raw, fearless. Ava, you've got something special." The class clapped, slowly at first, then louder. Even some of Madison's own followers clapped, their smirks now vanished. The tables had turned. Ava had taken their cruelty and transformed it into something magnetic. But she wasn't done yet. That evening, a short video clip from the class went viral. It showed Ava, ink-streaked and fearless, creating a masterpiece while whispering the now famous words, "Now watch." Overnight, her social media exploded. Students from other schools messaged her, some inspired, some shocked. But one message stood out. It was from a mysterious account that read, "We saw what you did. We'd like you to join our studio. Call us." It was signed by a major local art institute. Madison was fuming, locked in her room, watching Ava rise like a phoenix from the ashes of her prank. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The ink had dried, but the tremors of that moment still pulsed through the walls of Greenfield High like an echo refusing to fade. Ava, the once silent girl, had not only silenced the bullies, she had shaken the entire school into awakening. Her viral video had become the talk of every hallway, staff room, and teen group chat within 20 miles. But Ava didn't gloat. She didn't post dramatic captions or soak in the likes. Instead, she walked into school the next morning with the same quiet confidence, but this time, heads turned. Whispers followed her like shadows, and eyes filled with awe stared not because they pitied her, but because they feared her strength. Madison wasn't taking it well. Her grip on the social food chain had been compromised, and that made her desperate. The queen bee was now cornered, and a cornered bee stings harder. Sitting in her bedroom surrounded by LED lights and failed makeup live streams, she scrolled through Ava's rising follower count with rage. "You think you're better than me now?" she snarled under her breath. Lexi and Amber were quieter lately, hesitant, unsure whether to stay loyal or jump ship to Ava's fast, rising popularity. Even her online followers had turned. Half of them were defending Ava in the comments. Madison needed a plan to take back control, and this time it had to be bigger, harsher. Final. Back at school, Ava sat with a new group of students, fellow creatives, quiet thinkers, and even a few ex-fans of Madison who were finally waking up. It was during lunch that Ava was approached by Mr. Carver and a well-dressed woman in a blazer who introduced herself as Elise Marlowe, director of the prestigious Inkhouse Art Residency. Ava had impressed the board so much that they wanted her to represent youth creatives at a statewide exhibit. The catch: she had to prepare a massive original piece within 2 weeks and display it live in front of an audience of 500 people, including critics, donors, and elite scouts. Ava hesitated only for a second before nodding. "I'll do it," she said. The news spread like wildfire. "Ava's going to perform live. In front of everyone. She's representing the school. Wait, she's already more famous than Madison now?" The hallways buzzed with anticipation. But the pressure was rising too. Not everyone was happy. Especially Madison. She couldn't handle it anymore. "We're not letting her become a legend," she hissed to Lexi and Amber. "If she wants a stage, let's give her one she'll regret." The plan she crafted was cruel, theatrical, and timed perfectly. Madison knew the date of the showcase, and she intended to ruin it. Meanwhile, Ava spent every afternoon in the art room, preparing. Her hands were constantly stained with ink, charcoal, and paint. The piece she envisioned was more than just art. It was a statement. She was creating a portrait not of herself, but of every quiet student who had ever been laughed at, every girl mocked for being different, every artist told to shut up and blend in. She called it reclaiming silence. As the big day approached, her nerves grew, but so did her focus. Then came the night of the event. The auditorium was packed. Cameras were rolling, lights dimmed. A soft instrumental tune played in the background as Ava walked on stage with a blank 10-foot canvas. She was dressed in all white, hair in a bun, and palms ready for war. The crowd waited in silence. Then she began. Stroke after stroke, Ava transformed the blankness into chaos, pain, beauty, and emotion. Her hands danced in rhythm, each flick of her wrist delivering a message louder than any scream. The audience was mesmerized, but in the shadows behind the curtains, Madison was waiting. Dressed as a volunteer assistant, she crept toward the power switch with a bottle of red dye hidden under her jacket. Her plan was to ruin Ava's painting in the middle of the performance, humiliate her again in front of hundreds this time. As Ava neared the final moments of her act, just before the big reveal, Madison made her move. She lunged forward, uncapped the red dye, and flung it, but Ava turned at the exact moment. Time slowed. Instead of panic, Ava reached out mid-swing, caught Madison's arm with lightning reflexes, and spun her around so that the red dye splashed harmlessly across the floor. Gasps filled the room. Security rushed in. A few cameras even caught the moment. Madison being dragged off stage, humiliated, crying, and shouting that it was all just a prank. Ava turned back to her canvas, took a breath, dipped her fingers into the spilled red dye on the floor, and added one last stroke. Silence. Then the crowd erupted. Standing ovation, applause like thunder, reporters shouting her name, flashbulbs flashing. One of the gallery scouts approached her backstage with tears in his eyes. What you just did, that wasn't art. That was revolution. She was offered a scholarship right on the spot. The next day, Madison was suspended. Lexi and Amber deleted their social accounts. Ava, however, was invited to appear on morning shows, art podcasts, and even featured in an online mini-documentary titled The Girl Who Painted Back. But Ava remained grounded. She kept attending school like usual, still sitting in the back, still drawing in her sketchbook. Until one day, a student walked up to her, a freshman with shaky hands, holding a small doodle. "I don't know if this is good," the student said, blushing. Ava smiled, took the drawing, studied it, and said, "It's not about good or bad, it's about having the courage to show it." And just like that, a movement started. More kids began sketching, painting, expressing. The once quiet back row of the classroom became the most vibrant part of the school. Ava had changed everything, not by yelling, not by fighting, but by showing the world that silence, when ready, roars louder than any scream.